He is having a breakdown in real time. We see it. He is completely unable to hide the totally complex feelings that come to the fore every time he is in public with Meghan Markle. In some ways, he does despise his wife. It's not about love. It's not about affection. It's about ownership, and it's about showing the world who is in control. And he can't stand that, and he cannot pretend that he can put up with it anymore. She had a post-divorce plan that was being instigated very early on because I think she thought it would have happened by now.
Because there was anger there. And it wasn't anger at her, it was just anger. And she recognized it, she saw it.
In the final week of March 2026, a document prepared by a Los Angeles family law firm was quietly completed and placed into secure storage. It had not been requested by Harry. It had not been discussed with Harry. It had been commissioned, paid for, and completed entirely without his knowledge. And the woman whose name appeared at the top of that document as the instructing party was the woman he had given up everything for, Meghan. The document was a post-divorce financial framework, a detailed, professionally prepared assessment of how the assets and financial arrangements of Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, would be divided in the event that the marriage ended. It addressed the Montecito estate. It addressed the commercial ventures. It addressed the children. It addressed Meghan's independent brand structure, the legal restructuring of her commercial assets that had been quietly underway since early March. And it mapped out, in the precise technical language that family lawyers use when they are preparing for a formal separation, exactly what Meghan's position would be. Harry found out about the document on the morning of March 13th, 2026. The breakdown by the accounts of people close to him who have spoken to trusted journalists in the days since was immediate, visible, the kind of collapse that those who know Harry describe as unlike anything they have seen from him before.
My question would be, what do you think will happen to Prince Harry when Meghan Markle dumps him and writes her divorce book? Well, he's in trouble, isn't he?
The palace, when word reached royal sources through the networks of people who observed the Sussex situation, was described as shocked. Not by the state of the marriage, the signs of strain had been visible to those paying attention for some time, but by the specific, deliberate, documented nature of what Meghan had done. Today, we are going to tell you the full story of that document and what it contained. Meghan's post-divorce preparation reveals about where she is and what she has decided. We are going to walk you through the state of the Sussex marriage as it stands in the second week of March 2026, honestly, carefully, with the balance this story requires. And we are going to tell you what all of it means for Harry, for Meghan, and for the institution that has been watching this situation develop from a distance it cannot reduce. We are going to take our time, because this is a human story, and you deserve to have it told properly. So settle in, and let's begin. To understand the full weight of what Harry discovered on March 14th, 2026, you need to understand the context into which that discovery landed. Because the marriage that the post-divorce document addresses was not, at that point, a marriage in its ordinary state. It was a marriage that had been under severe and escalating pressure for the preceding 6 weeks. And each piece of that pressure matters when you are trying to understand why the discovery of the document produced the response it produced. Let's go back to the beginning of March 2026. Harry had been in London for his court case against Associated Newspapers Limited, the publisher of the Daily Mail and the Mail, on Sunday. The lawsuit he had described as the most important legal action of his life, the case that was going to change British media and produce the financial settlement that would resolve the mounting pressure on his finances. The case collapsed in late February when his central witness admitted in open court that the evidence he had provided was fabricated. On March 4th, Harry's legal team sent a $59 million bill to Buckingham Palace demanding that King Charles cover the costs. Charles rejected it the same day. On March 9th, the palace formally rejected Harry's proposal for a hybrid return to royal duties. On March 11th, Harry gave an interview in which he suggested his family was choosing not to help him. On March 12th, Charles eliminated the private $2.7 million annual allowance he had been quietly providing to his son, effective immediately. Harry returned to Montecito in the second week of March 2026, carrying the full weight of all of that: the court case, the rejections, the eliminated allowance, the financial assessment that his advisors placed in front of him, showing he needed $10 million immediately with no obvious source to get it from. He came home to a household that those close to it describe as already strained, already operating with a degree of separation between his situation and Meghan's, already showing the signs of the divergence that had been building since the events of early March. Meghan accelerating her independent commercial strategy, restructuring her assets, conducting solo business meetings in Los Angeles, moving forward with a purposefulness that contrasted sharply with the paralysis that those close to Harry describe as his dominant state since his return from London. He came home to a household where his wife was, by all external indications, managing her own situation rather than their shared one. If you are watching this channel for the first time and you want to follow this story as it continues to develop, and there is considerably more still unfolding, please subscribe right now. We cover the royal family in the depth and detail these stories deserve for people who want to understand what is really happening beneath the headlines. Hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and every new video comes straight to you. Let's talk about the document itself. Because precision matters here, and the difference between what the document was and what it was not is significant. The post-divorce financial framework was not a divorce filing. It was not a petition to a court, a formal legal action, or a public document of any kind. It was a private, internal preparation. A document that a person commissions when they are thinking seriously about the possibility of divorce and want to understand what their financial position would be if they proceeded. Family lawyers call this contingency planning. It is the process by which a person who is considering ending a marriage asks their legal advisors to map out the landscape before they make a decision, to show them what the division of assets would look like, what the arrangements for children would involve, what their financial position would be on the other side of a separation. Commissioning such a document does not mean a person has decided to divorce. It means they have decided to understand their options, to know in specific and legally informed terms what the path out looks like, so that when they are making the decision about whether to stay or to go, they are making it with clear information rather than in ignorance of the practical consequences. That distinction matters, and it needs to be held throughout this story, but it also needs to be acknowledged that the distinction has limits, because commissioning a post-divorce financial framework is not a neutral act. It is an act of preparation. It is a person saying, privately and through their formal legal channels, that the possibility of divorce is real enough and near enough to justify the cost and the effort of understanding it in detail. You do not commission that document when you are certain your marriage is secure. You commission it when you are not. And what Meghan's document showed, what Harry's advisors were eventually able to determine about its contents, was a financial picture that had been prepared with the same care and legal sophistication that Meghan brings to all of her professional decisions. The document addressed the Montecito estate and its division or potential sale in the context of a separation. It addressed the independent commercial assets that Meghan had been restructuring since early March. The A's, Everbrand, her production interests, her separate financial holdings, and it mapped out their status as assets independent of Harry's debts and Harry's financial liabilities. Read that last part again. The document treated Meghan's restructured commercial assets as independent of Harry's debts. That means the legal restructuring that had been underway since early March, the thing that those close to the couple's financial situation had been describing as prudent asset protection in the context of Harry's court case liability, was not just prudent asset protection. It was the groundwork for a post-divorce financial position. The assets were being restructured not simply to protect them from Harry's creditors, but to establish their status as Meghan's independent property in the event the marriage ended. The restructuring and the document were connected. One was the preparation and the other was the plan. Harry understood this when the contents were explained to him, and the understanding of it, the realization that what he had believed was his wife protecting their shared assets from an external legal threat was actually his wife preparing for the possibility that they would not be sharing assets for much longer, is what produced the breakdown. Not the possibility of divorce itself, painful as that was to confront, but the discovery that the preparation had been happening without his knowledge, that decisions of that magnitude had been made, legal documents of that significance had been commissioned, without a conversation, without a warning, without the basic courtesy of being told. That is what broke him, not just what was in the document, but the fact that it existed at all without him knowing. Let's talk about why Meghan did this. Because understanding her reasoning, or at least the most honest assessment of what her reasoning likely was, is essential to understanding this story fairly. There are several possible explanations, and they are not mutually exclusive. The truth is probably a combination of all of them. The first explanation is practical self-protection. Meghan is a woman who has, throughout her adult life, operated with a high degree of strategic awareness about her own situation and her own position. She entered the royal family understanding it as an institution with specific rules and specific implications for her financial and personal autonomy. She left it with the same strategic clarity. The events of March 2026, Harry's court case collapse, the eliminated allowance, the $10 million liability, the financial pressure that was descending on the Montecito household, represented a level of financial risk that a person of Meghan's strategic character would address proactively rather than reactively. The second explanation is the divergence that had been building since Harry returned from London. Those close to the couple describe a household in which two people who had always presented themselves as a unified front were, by the third week of March 2026, operating with an increasing degree of separation. Harry's paralysis and Meghan's acceleration had created a distance that was not dramatic or confrontational, but that was real and growing. The third explanation is the one that those close to Meghan are most careful not to articulate directly, but that several sources have gestured toward in their choice of words. That Meghan has been working through, over a period of several months, a private reckoning with the question of whether the life she is living is the life she wants to continue living. Whether the partnership she entered in 2018 has produced the shared chapter she hoped it would. Whether the costs of that partnership, the institutional battles, the financial strain, the sustained public controversy, the particular weight of being defined primarily in relation to a man and his grievances, rather than as a person and a builder in her own right, are costs she is still willing to pay. That reckoning is private. Its conclusions are not public. But the document suggests that the reckoning has reached a point where preparing for a different future is something Meghan considers necessary rather than premature. Let's take a brief pause here. We are at the midpoint of this story, and the section ahead covers what the palace knows, how Harry has been since the discovery, and what the options facing both of them actually are. If you are finding this as significant as we do, and the state of this marriage has implications that go well beyond the two people at its centre, please share this video with someone who is following this story and who would want to understand it properly. It takes just a moment. Thank you. Let's talk about the palace. Because the reaction described as shock in the hours after word reached royal sources needs to be understood in its proper context. The palace has been monitoring the Sussex situation, the financial deterioration, the commercial setbacks, the legal collapse, the signs of marital strain, with the kind of careful, continuous attention that the institution gives to anything that has the potential to produce news that reflects on the Crown. This is not surveillance in any sinister sense. It is the normal institutional awareness that a body which manages its public reputation as carefully as the palace does maintains about the situations of people whose names are still attached to it. What the palace was not prepared for, what produced the shock reaction, rather than simply another update on a deteriorating situation, was the specific, deliberate, documented nature of the post-divorce preparation. Because a post-divorce financial framework prepared by a Los Angeles family and law firm is not a private emotional development inside a struggling marriage, it is a legal artifact, a document that exists, that is stored somewhere, that could, under certain circumstances, become relevant to court proceedings. That represents a formal and professional step toward the possibility of separation in a way that emotional distance and commercial divergence do not. For the palace, the existence of that document creates a category of risk that the institution's communications team has not previously had to manage in quite this form. The Sussex marriage ending is not, from an institutional standpoint, a catastrophe. Harry has already been removed from the working royal structure. His return has been formally rejected. His financial claims on the Crown have been formally refused. The institution is, in the language of those inside it, operationally insulated from whatever happens to Harry personally. But a Sussex divorce conducted publicly in the California court system, with the assets and financial arrangements of a member of the royal family subject to formal legal scrutiny, would produce a volume and a duration of coverage that the palace would have no means of controlling. The details of the Sussex finances, the royal family's private financial arrangements, the history of the private allowance, the nature of the commercial deals and their terms, all of it potentially entering the public domain through the discovery process of a divorce proceeding. That is the institutional risk that the palace was shocked to discover is now a credible possibility rather than a distant hypothetical. Now let's talk about Harry. Because the breakdown that those close to him describe, the immediate, visible, total collapse, requires us to understand what the discovery of this document meant to him personally. Harry built his entire public narrative around the marriage, around the conviction that Meghan was the reason for everything, the reason he left the royal family, the reason he walked away from his country, the reason he gave up the role, the life, the institution, and the family he had been born into. Meghan was not simply his wife in the ordinary sense that a wife is a person's partner. She was the justification for every choice he had made since January 2020, when he told the world, in interviews and in books and in documentary footage, that he had found something worth all of that sacrifice, something in the form of a person and a partnership and a shared life in California. He was not performing. Those who know him believe he meant it, that the conviction was genuine, that the love was real. The post-divorce document does not mean the love was not real. It does not mean Meghan never loved him or that the marriage was built on something false. People can love each other and still reach a point where the practical reality of the life they are living together becomes incompatible with what each of them needs individually. But for Harry, the discovery that Meghan had been preparing for a life without him, formally, legally, through documents prepared by a Los Angeles family law firm without his knowledge, produced a confrontation with a possibility he had been refusing to fully consider. The loss of belonging. That is what the breakdown was about, not simply the discovery of a legal document, but the recognition of what that document implied about the future of the only remaining thing he had built that he truly believed in. Now let's talk about what happens next, because despite the severity of this moment, the future is not entirely without the possibility of a different outcome. The document exists, but it has not been filed. No divorce petition has been submitted to any court. no formal separation has been announced. The marriage, as a legal and formal matter, continues. And those close to both Harry and Meghan say the same thing when asked about the days following the Fantômas discovery, that the conversation, the direct, honest, deeply difficult conversation that the discovery of the document forced, has happened, that it was not easy, that it covered ground that both of them had been avoiding, perhaps for longer than they would have been comfortable admitting. What that conversation produced is not something that sources are willing to describe in detail. The private reality of a marriage navigating this kind of moment is, and should be, private in a way that the financial and institutional dimensions of the story are not. The marriage may survive this, the combination of shared children, shared history, the genuine love that those who know them believe existed and may still exist, and the practical reality that a divorce in 2026 would produce consequences for both of them that neither of them would find comfortable. All of those factors work against a quick or easy separation. But the document exists, and the fact that it was commissioned and completed without Harry's knowledge tells a story about the state of the partnership that the passage of time and the resolution of the immediate financial crisis cannot simply erase. Let's end where this story finds its most human truth. Not in the document, not in the legal frameworks or the asset restructuring or the institutional implications, but in the image of a man sitting with a discovery that collapsed everything he thought he knew about the present moment of his life. Harry has been through extraordinary things. He lost his mother at 12 years old in circumstances of public tragedy that shaped everything that came after. He spent decades inside an institution that he eventually concluded was causing him more harm than it was worth. He made a choice, the most consequential choice of his adult life, and he has been living with the consequences of that choice for 6 years. The California life was supposed to be the answer, the freedom, the partnership, the authentic existence on his own terms that the institutional royal life had not allowed him to build. And now, in the final week of March 2026, the court case has failed. The family has closed its doors. The finances are in crisis, and the woman who was supposed to be the reason for all of it has been quietly preparing, through a Los Angeles family law firm, for the possibility of a future that does not include him. That is a great deal for one human being to absorb, in real time, without the support structures that most people in crisis have available to them. In a country that is not his home, in a house that may need to be sold, in a situation that has no simple resolution and no obvious path to something better. Those who love Harry are worried about him in a way that goes beyond the financial crisis and the legal situation. They are worried about the man himself, about whether the accumulation of these losses, each one significant on its own, collectively almost incomprehensible, is producing a weight that he can carry. They believe he can. Not because they are certain, but because they have watched him carry things before that other people would not have carried. Because the resilience that coexists with his vulnerability is real. Because the love for his children, Archie and Lilibet, the two people in the world whose futures depend on him finding his way through this, is a motivation that those who know him describe as the most stable and most enduring thing in his life. He will carry this too, in whatever form carrying it takes. But tonight, in the house in Montecito, with the document in existence and the conversation having happened and the future still unresolved, he is sitting with something that most of us understand in some form from our own lives. The moment when the thing you built your certainty around reveals itself to be less certain than you believed. That moment does not end a person, but it changes them, and what Harry becomes on the other side of this particular moment is the question that those who care about him are holding on to. We are holding on to it too. Thank you so much for watching today all the way to the end. This is one of the most personal and most difficult stories we have covered on this channel, and we are grateful to every one of you who stayed with it through all of it. If it moved you, And I believe it will have, because the discovery that someone you love has been preparing for a life without you is one of the most painful things a human being can experience. Please leave a comment below. Tell us whether you believe the Sussex marriage survives this. Tell us whether you think both of them deserve a path to something better, whatever form that takes. We read every comment, and your perspective matters to us deeply. And if you are not yet subscribed, please do it now. Click subscribe, turn on your notifications, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you. We will see you soon.